I have probably spent more time here than anywhere else in the city visiting it and bringing my students. I'm just going to give you a little bit of background about it, and then I'm going to tell you a bit about the controversy, and then I'm going to ask you to think about what's missing or what, like, I heard people coming up and the gasps at how unkempt it is and how poorly kept up it is. This is part of the city parks. We are in the memorial landscape, so we want to think about that. All right, so let me just give you some background. It was designed by two Italian architects, Capraro and Komar. The monument is an inscribed travertine block with a Corinthian column sitting on the top, an ancient Corinthian column, 1930s block. It was erected to celebrate the 1933 transatlantic flight of Marshall Italo Balbo, who was an air general in the Italian army, right? In the 30s, right? So we want to think about that, right? So the first century CE column is probably spolia that was gifted to the city by Mussolini in honor of Balbo's flight. This is the original location from the 1933 Century of Progress World's Fair site. This has never been moved. So it's in its original location, which is unlike a lot of the other World's Fair stuff from either one. A lot of them have been relocated. So while most of the 1933 World's Fair structures were leveled after this event, because behind this would have been the Italian pavilion. And I highly recommend you Google that, because as James said, there were 30, 40, 50,000 Italian Americans here for the dedication. And there's a plane that's embedded in the pavilion. It's just a really stunning image. So today it sits in the parks, the national or the city parks, and it's this lasting monument to the ancient and modern glories of Italy. I discovered this when I had students go around the city looking for examples, not in museums, but anywhere else, of ancient art in public spaces. I highly recommend you go on the Brown Line and find a bit of the Berlin Wall. Oh yeah, there are things all over the city. And my students introduced me. I'm not from Chicago, as I said. My students introduced me to this. So there was one student who was an Italian-American student who'd grown up here, and she did her paper on Balbo. And I was like, wait, what's that? I don't know that. So I, since that 2012, have adopted it in every single class since. And it doesn't matter what I'm teaching, people are visiting this site. So it's the oldest outdoor artifact in Chicago, and it functions as a testament to the glories of ancient Rome, I guess. So at the same time as the monument served the purpose of rallying support from the Italian-American community, which is very vocal and very cohesive, as they were in the 30s, they are still, and they love this monument. And if you go on the Chicago Monuments website, there is in their report testimony from the leader or the director of the Italian-American community about why we need this monument. Because as James said, when the Columbus statue was taken down by Lori Lightfoot, she then established the Chicago Monuments Project, which was to go around the city and look for problematic monuments and then to write a report on what we should do with them. So this was one of the monuments under consideration, and in their report, they suggested that it be put into storage. As they did for most of the problematic monuments. That's all they recommended, put into storage with no other information. So during the moment where the Columbus statue was taken down and George Floyd, this went up. So there was no fence here before that. And there was a movement that people were going to come and take this down, but they did not. But there was, for many days and weeks, there was a police car stationed right here. This is my commute to work. I live on the south side and I work in Lincoln Park and I ride my bike along here. And so I was watching us all in real time during this moment. And on August 12th, 2020, what were we all doing in August of 2020? Sitting at home, not being archaeologists, losing our minds. So I decided to come out here and do a little project. So for 6 hours, I sat there and I asked every single person who went by if they knew what this was. I had a little sign that said, do you know what this is? So if you were biking by, you could just put, and it said, raise your hand if you know what this is. People would just raise their hand. And so then I took notes and, quantified the comments, got some qualitative comments. I had people who would ride by, see the sign, and then turn around and come back and say, hey, can you tell me what it is? Because I have ridden by here for weeks and I don't know what it is. And lots of people were tourists. Other people, one person had run by here for 20 years. They were like, I never even noticed it. Not that they didn't know what it was, they never even noticed it. I will tell you, it was my total anthropology hat. And I will just say, for all you art historians, I cannot tell you about all the art historical aspects of this. I can only tell you about the anthropology, but somebody else maybe here can. So let me just tell you about my stats. So I talked to 924 people, cyclists, divvy bike riders, just like that, right? Runners, walkers, tourists. About 20% answered my query, and that's pretty good stat for a survey. And of that 20%, and I also took a stat on people who just looked, right? So it wasn't just about if they engaged with me, but I made them look. It was a made you look moment where maybe they had never looked before. So I categorized them speaking to me in the made you look moment as engagement, and that was about 40% of the people who went by. Only 20% of those responded, of the 20% who responded, only 13% knew what it was. 13% knew that this was Balbo Monument. And the comments are amazing, oh yeah, it's something about fascism. Oh yeah, I saw it on WTTW, history moments. I think it's something famous, something to do with Mussolini, just all over the board. I think it's ancient, I don't know. So the most common question that I got from people was what? From where it comes from, and how would you know that? If I wasn't here to tell you? Yeah, so there's a lot of archival documentation, and I can send you an article by Felicia Negro-Capopranti, who is a lawyer who did a deep dive into the archival documentation associated with this. But what are we missing in this spot right now? No sign. And that was the most common question of people riding by. Why isn't there a sign? And that's always the common question from my students. Why isn't there a sign? So what do I have them do? Have them write a sign. They do a label for this. They can choose to tear it down or write a label. Those are the choices, and they can think about the whole thing. And so most of the assignment is related to that. So as I said, and as James said, Lori Lightfoot establishes this Chicago Monuments Project, which is reviewing the city monuments. This comes under the gaze, and it is in their report. They decide that it should be put into storage, taken down. But interestingly, as you said, James, the peak of looking at these things and deciding whether to tear them down or not, it seems like it's moved on. But for me, what's really problematic, I've been coming to this place since 2012. When this fence was not here, this was upkept. It looked in much better shape. You can see if you wander around, there are actually plants growing out of the crevices. And this is a really bad, either you take it down or you caretake for it, because it is our taxpayer dollars doing what? I don't know. So the other thing that I ask my students to think about as we walk through the memorial landscape is, if your loved people were memorialized here, would you like them to be in concert with a fascist monument? I don't have an answer to that, but it's a question that raises a lot of conversation in class, because this was here first, but now we are dedicating, if we walked beyond here, there's another memorial for fallen firefighters, and another, there are a bunch more memorials as you walk towards the Invention Center. And those are all later additions to this landscape. And so someone in the city planning office knew that this was always going to be here and didn't think that it was at all problematic to have a fascist monument in the same landscape as where you're dedicating to folks. Yeah. No. I mean, some of them are older than this. but in the image from 33, there are very few trees. And I think this whole area was leveled for the World's Fair. So it was probably post 33, most of the trees, I would say. Yeah. I don't know. Tree people would know more than me about growth. 1933. Some of the trees, I don't know. I'm sure some of them are more recent because they're in with the memorial landscape, but yes. And they were removed, I think, in the 40s. Yes. Is that how you say it? Fasces? Fasces?
In Latin,
Fasces? Okay, see, I don't know any of these things, right? Like, I'm the anthropologist, I'm not art historian. All right, so let me just tell you a bit more about the last part of this, because I know people got to get back. And really, we want to thank you for coming out, because this has been a good first time. As part of the Chicago monuments, you know, they went around, they looked for problematic monuments. I will send the link to anybody who's interested, because it's a super interesting site. And they recommended that most of them be taken down and then put into storage, but probably none of it's going to happen, I don't think. But they recently got a $6.8 million grant from the Mellon Foundation to put up counter monuments. And that's what James's article is about, monuments and counter monuments. Where they are going to engage with have new and up and coming Chicago artists create monuments to different events and to different people. And so there will be a series of counter monuments, at least 7 of them, to people like Mahalia Jackson and Mother Jones, folks like that. And so we will have a new set of monuments in this city that speak to the ones that are staying if they're not being taken down. Okay, I don't know about these plaques. I've asked, so to be flies on the wall or to be annoying pests, Rebecca Graff and I attended every single one of the Zoom meetings for the Chicago Monuments Project. And we asked that she had her own beef about stuff on the south side because she's more interested in one of the statues that was targeted is the gold lady that's left over from the, yeah. And so that was under consideration for being taken down. And so she really wanted to save that. And I really wanted to ask about this. So every time we would ask, where's the sign? Are you going to put a label up? What are you doing? And then people didn't really like us very much. I don't have an answer for that. I don't know. But I have a lot of labels from students over the years that could go up here. And let me just say, some of them are super edgy. And some of them, what my favorite one is one of those do not cross like dead people ribbons around here saying give it back. Because Felicia's article is about whether or not Italy has a cultural property claim to that column. Because Mussolini may or may not have had permission under their laws to send it. But it's not the only column he sent, because there are at least 2 more, 2 in Brazil, and then he sent a bunch of other things too, as total diplomatic propaganda during the 30s. If they want it, yes. Right? We could ask them. And we could be proactive about it. Yeah. Maybe I'll get my students on a letter writing campaign. All right. So we're going to leave it here. I want to thank York and James for helping me out. And we have to give it up for Matt Howland, who is taping this and produced the story map. There's a story map if you want to redo this, or you want to bring friends and family, students, or if you just want more information. And really, thanks so much for coming. And if you enjoyed this, make sure you tell ASOR and you want to do an outside event again. Ashley and I were just talking about next time it's in Chicago, maybe she'll give a tour of the Egyptian Gallery at the Art Institute, right? Yes, we need more tours at ASOR.